Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome back to Epic Dream. This is part 2 of our Halloween special. I'd highly encourage you to check out part 1, but I know that some of you won't, so the short version of what's going on here is that I frequently have very vivid lucid dreams that sometimes make for fantastic ASMR-style scary stories. However, instead of just staring at a generic background or generic gameplay throughout the entirety of this, I hired 2 artists to help flesh out this story. First up is our very own Black Oni, who you've seen in I don't even know how many videos on this channel. He's got 2 pieces of art, and then 2 pieces of art from another artist from Fiverr who will be linked down there below in the description to kind of add some visual flair to this story. This story is called The Last Refusal, and I'm going to warn you before you get into it, it's gonna be dark. It's dark. It's a real, kick in the guts. So if you're in a little bit of a bad mood and you're looking for something super uplifting, this probably isn't for you. But without any further ado, let's jump in. This stream starts off innocently enough in the world that we all know and love. You know, the real world. The one where you have to wake up in the morning and go to work, you have to earn your money, feed your family, hug your wife, go to bed, do it all again the next day, with everybody trying to save up for the next best thing or scheme their way to the top. A whole world full of people and their various problems, but it's the world that we're all familiar with and the one that we live in, except there is a bad omen on the horizon. There's a general sense of uneasiness amongst people because a number of bizarre things are beginning to happen in the world. A lot of unusual weather patterns like the freeze or the burn that we've had in previous years. There have been animals that are dying off or becoming aggressive for no particular reasons, weird astrological phenomenons, and it just seems that too many small weird things are happening all at once for this to be a coincidence. Then there's rumblings in society, primarily starting with the conspiracy theorists, since they like to overanalyze things, about doom and gloom, end of the world is coming. And it starts off slow. Oh, these people are crazy. They're silly. You don't have to pay attention to that. Everything's fine. But then everything's not fine. All of these problems keep getting worse and worse, and the weather keeps getting more and more ridiculous, and there's more flooding and more aggressive animals. And then finally, there is a sort of admission on the part of the federal government that the world is indeed coming to an end. This end is definite and it is unavoidable. Think kind of like Steve Carell in Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. Like a giant meteor is going to hit and turn the whole planet into dust and there's nothing you can do about it. Except in this case, it seems to be runaway climate change. Kind of like the movie The Day After Tomorrow, where everything floods and freezes super quick and it all goes to just absolute chaos. Except for no particular reason, animals seem to be getting smarter rapidly. Every generation, more and more intelligent, more aggressive, more angry toward human beings. And it isn't just flooding and freezing and raining a whole lot, but it's kind of like super global warming at the same time. Some of you might be familiar with something called the wet bulb temperature. The short version of this is it's a temperature beyond which human beings cannot live without protection or cooling of some kind. A temperature in which that no matter how healthy, how well adjusted, how many cool layers or water you drink, that you're just going to dehydrate and roast to death. It's sort of the ultimate doom and gloom theory amongst global warming believers. And as far as anybody can tell, and every government on the planet predicts, that's coming. And it's not coming in 50 years. It's not coming in 20, 30, 5, more like 2 or 3. It's coming fast. We've got just a couple of years left on this planet before every single living human being is dead. And then, well, probably most of the animals will die too. The way to think about it in this context would be kind of like that 2012 movie where all sorts of crazy things are going to happen all at once, and also the fact that it is unavoidable, uncancelable, and unfixable. There's not really any hope for anybody. There's no goal for humanity past this. We're all just pretty much doomed, and that every single thing that we've accomplished over the last several thousand years is going to turn to dust. Unsurprisingly, society itself begins to crumble. People don't want to work, people go crazy, people get violent, nobody cares to do anything. All that money that you hoarded is suddenly absolutely worthless. People are just wilding out with orgies, with doing drugs and overdosing, breaking laws, murder sprees. The less stable among us didn't take this very well and they just went plain out crazy, but for the most part, they burned themselves out. The rest of us, stuck on this rock, are trying to make do and trying to make the best of what we have with the last couple of years of our lives. So there's some people working, there's still some supply lines going on, some things happening, but it's getting kind of rough out there. It's kind of hard to get supplies, resources are getting slim, electricity's kind of hit or miss here and there. And one of the scariest things about this dream is that suicide and hopelessness are at an all-time high. People have decided that since the world is ending, that life just isn't worth living, and they're just popping off. Cyanide, gunshot, hanging, anything, all killing themselves. And the crazy part, the actual terrifying part to me, is that there was a suicide industry on TV. For those of us lucky enough to have electricity, there were still things being broadcast. There were still psychopaths out there running businesses, hoping to turn some kind of profits before the end of the world. And one of the most profitable industries was a painless way to kill yourself. I probably saw more advertisements about various suicide contraptions than I did any useful information about survival on the radio or television. It's not exactly a positive future for humanity. I've spent a couple of minutes describing the world that's going on, and the question is, well, how do I fit into it? I fit into it as myself. I'm me, I'm stubborn, I don't want to die, I'm not going to give up, I'm not going to commit suicide. I have hope for the future, and I want to keep going, a pointless, baseless hope. Though there is a downside. As many of you may know, my health is exceptionally poor lately, and there's a couple of medications that I take to kind of keep me functional, not alive, but functional. And nobody is making medicine right now. There's no supply lines for that. That's an advanced industrial manufacturing process. I can't get the pills I need. I can't get painkillers. I can't get braces. I can't get treatment for my various ailments. There's really nothing for me to do except maybe steal old meds from people and try to hang in there. And it's hard, and I am getting weaker every day. Anytime I get hurt, it's permanent. My body clicks and clacks and struggles, and over time in this chaos, I know that I'm degenerating, but I'm working my best to keep it up, to stay strong, to have a brave face, because I promised my wife that no matter what, I wouldn't give up, that the two of us would find a way together, that we would move forward, and somehow, against all absolutely impossible world-ending odds, survive the impending apocalypse. And that was my goal, that was my motivation, and I really meant it and I really stuck to it. So every single day I would get up, I would go scavenge for supplies, I would go check little trading posts, and I guess whatever you could pass for a store these days, which are more like swap meets. I would look for meds, I would look for food, water, batteries, pretty much anything that's useful to make my life comfortable or to help me and my wife live longer. The problem is there was just less and less useful stuff. The overwhelming depression of the fact that the world was ending meant that nobody was really producing anything, and the people that didn't want to kill themselves were pretty much fighting over the scraps that were left, so there really wasn't much to go around. And the world was getting more and more dangerous as well. Animals are starting to get wilder and smarter, more aggressive. They seem to hunt humans. Some of them even apparently can talk, though I hadn't seen such a thing in my life, but that's what other people were saying. And there was also less and less land area. As the oceans began to rise, the creatures continued to creep, and your encounters with them became more and more frequent. It was about this time that society really starts to break down, and instead of having limited supply lines or limited groceries or a little bit of this and that, there's really a whole lot of nothing left. Instead of trying to dig around in stores and abandoned homes, my number one strategy came to be finding families that committed suicide. I would knock on doors if nobody answered, kick it in, force my way in with whatever strength I had, and more often than not, I would find a whole bunch of dead bodies of people that shot themselves, hung themselves, took some kind of poison, suffocated, did whatever they could do to die as painlessly as possible. Most of them didn't have full going away parties. Most of them still had things left for me to consume and use. So my life became a grim reminder that every single person around me was completely losing hope and giving up on life, and that I had to steal the scraps of their hope in order to feed me and my wife. And that was getting increasingly difficult, mostly because my wife was also beginning to lose hope. Her talks to me became more and more grim, more and more despondent. The more horrible things she saw, the more she wished to avoid those fates, the painful, slow, miserable deaths, attacked by wild animals, starving, burning, beaten up by barbarians, something like that. And she began to get increasingly suicidal. We had conversation after conversation, argument after argument, and fight after fight about sticking it out, about staying until the very end, surviving as long as we can, and having the best time we can with each other. But the reality was grim. There wasn't any hope on the horizon. This apparent impending apocalypse wasn't getting any better, if not, and if anything, it was just accelerating faster than anybody ever could have expected. It was like living in biblical times, like Pandora's box or the gates of chaos have been opened and are flooding into this world in more ways than one, and we human beings just can't adapt that fast, no matter what. By and large, humanity was wiped away. There wasn't that many people left, some small percentage, clusters here and there, survivalist preppers, rugged souls like myself that just wouldn't give up no matter what was going on, stubborn people, fools you might say. And unfortunately, these aren't exactly the kind of people that you want to meet. These aren't exactly the kind of people that are worth saving. So it became very isolating for me and her to try to live. And then eventually, at the end of this scary process, my wife finally lost hope. She just gave up, and she wanted to kill herself so bad so that she wouldn't have to suffer like all those other people and all those other bodies that she'd seen, and that it wouldn't matter anyway, that we're both going to the same place, the void, and that all of humanity's wiped away, so there's no reason to hang on or fight or do or anything. And I didn't want to do that, and it became a huge issue between the two of us because she didn't want to do it unless we did it together. That we have been together for a long time, we should go out together, and it had to be a sort of unanimous vote, and my vote was always no. Unfortunately, the world has a way of breaking people and their wills, and she hung on with me for a very long time. But as the waters continued to rise and the animals continued to hunt and the barbarians continued to descend further and further into madness, her final straw was her family. My wife has always been very close to her family, very attached to them in a lot of ways. And her family, at some point, they stuck it out quite a long way. Her family's all preppers. They don't quit easily, but they realized what was coming, and they all decided to commit suicide. I don't really know when, and I'm not exactly sure about how either, because we hadn't seen them in a very long time. There weren't phones. Radios were extraordinarily limited. We couldn't exactly communicate. So we made a relatively short journey to where they lived to go check in on them and try to, I was going to like cheer her up, like, yeah, let's go visit your family. That'll make you feel better. It'll give you a reason to live. And we just come in to a whole room full of dead bodies, husband, wife, children, all completely dead, rotting, late stages of decay. They'd probably killed themselves a month ago, if not more. Didn't even say goodbye. They just did it and noped out. And that absolutely broke her. That absolutely broke her soul and spirit in ways that I've never seen. I didn't think I would see in a dream. I certainly haven't seen such a thing in real life. And she collapsed on both knees in the middle of the living room, crying, surrounded by the bloated corpses of her dead family, and told me that this was it, that this was enough, that this is the end of the line for her. And she wanted me to commit suicide with her to avoid the painful fate that is coming later. And I simply refused. I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not going to give up. I begged her, I pleaded with her, I cried, and I told her that we can do this, we can fight through this, we can keep pushing, we can keep going, there's always hope. But for her, there was no more hope. It was all completely gone. And after I have an unknown number of hours of arguing and crying and hugging, I realized that she had truly given up. And to be honest, she wasn't wrong. There really wasn't any real hope. If I'm going to be really real with myself and rational and be objective about this, there's absolutely no hope. And that everything that I'm doing is just prolonging my own suffering. But I just can't quit. So we're at an impasse. And the impasse was settled simply that we would part ways, that I would leave and I would continue to live, and that she would stay there in that room full of death that was once full of her family's wonderful life, and she would finish herself as she saw fit. Not a solution that I liked, not one that I took easily and didn't argue about, but you can't, or at least I as a partner, won't make my partner do things they don't want to do, and she didn't want to live, and there wasn't really a reason to. So the only thing I could do is walk away. And to my memory, I remember walking away from the house crying and just hearing a single gunshot from the inside and knowing how permanent that really was. Walking would be a generous thing for me. I'm in very poor health at this point. My joints are failing, my back hurts, my hands are questionable. I'm losing muscle mass, having difficulty eating. Not that there's a lot of food to eat. All of my problems are getting worse and worse. And now, of all the things that are broken, my heart is broken too. And there's nowhere to go, no reason left to live, nobody to even take note of anything that you do before you disappear. And instead of giving up, I just absolutely refused and decided to keep on living as long as I possibly could. The rest of the dream is a little bit of a blur, but I continued to survive, fight forward when I had to struggle, to starve quite a bit, but to get enough food to stay alive. And I was getting weaker and weaker every single day. There was all sorts of barbarians and scavengers. I couldn't really do anything about them. The best thing that I could possibly do is hide. So I spent a lot of my time hiding, watching, covered in dirt and mud, filthy, but alive. The water levels keep rising and rising and rising. Faster and faster and faster. The animals get more and more aggressive and mean. And I swear I'm hearing some of them speak words at some point, but I just keep surviving. It's just like the world's most pitiful man that just absolutely refuses to die. And eventually the water levels begin to rise faster than I can really run away with, and I was kind of forced to take refuge in a skyscraper. There wasn't really anything else that had land that I could stand on. It was just rising and I had to sleep, and I knew that by morning it could go up 10-20 feet, so I just went up the skyscraper as far as I could go, which at the time was partially empty. There were some people holed up in there, but took my nap. I woke up, and lo and behold, my prediction was true. The water levels were impassable in the morning. And there I was, stuck in a big skyscraper somewhere in an indescript part of the US. I'm not even sure which city I managed to make it to at this point. And there were other people flooding in as well, paddling in on boats, other survivors like me, some brutal, monstrous murderers. I don't know. I just can't keep track of it all. So I decided to make my way around the skyscraper and decide to see if there's anything I can eat, anything I can scavenge or find. Thankfully, this place was somewhat well stocked, at least with lots of junk foods, non-perishables, bottled water, and most importantly, alcohol. I'm not a drinker, so I didn't touch any of it, but there was a bar left nearly unrated, and when I went to check out the floor that had the bar on it, I found 4 or 5 people sitting around just drinking. Somebody was playing a little bit of music on a radio. I guess somebody found some batteries somewhere. And they were all just kind of pretending that everything was fine and the world wasn't ending. Even had a person sort of doing play bartender, paying with money, but random prices like it's Monopoly money, not that it matters now. And of all the people in this bar, I find my elderly father, this stubborn old man, apparently just like me, with all of his ailments and problems, have decided that he doesn't want to die today. He's not giving up. He's not going to kill himself like all these other people. And I sit down and I talk to him. We have a very unpleasant conversation. While he won't do that, he won't quit. He is despondent and without hope, just like everybody else. And I ask him if he wants to keep going and keep fighting and surviving with me, and his answer is no, that he's going to sit here in this bar with these people, and he is going to drink until that water level rises and drowns him, and he is never going to leave this room, and there is nothing I can do about it. And I know that's true. But then there's another problem brewing, a slightly weirder problem. That's the thing with dreams. You know, over time they get more and more abstract, and this is probably some kind of abstraction. And as silly as it sounds in an overwhelmingly bleak and topical commentary, the animals have finally showed up. In this case, they're sentient crocodiles, and they are hungry. Saltwater, big, 12, 20-foot monstrous in size crocodiles that think that human beings are delicious. And the worst thing in the world is they can talk. And my God, did they ever have some things to say. They're terrifying little animals. But they don't like coming too far out of the water. They know they're weak on the land, so everybody in the skyscraper sees them. The crocodiles are sort of taunting them, teasing them, letting them know that they're going to eat all their flesh, either dead or alive, soon enough that the water's coming and they can't avoid it. We throw rocks at them, we throw spears at them, we harass them, but there's so many we don't really make any dent in the numbers, not a realistic amount. And I try to tell my father that there's a horrible death awaiting him, that as soon as the water level reaches his floor of the building, that these ancient dinosauric monsters are going to rip him to shreds and enjoy every last second of it, and he just will not move. He has lost his hope, and he tells me that he is going to die just the way that he lived, right here in this bar, enjoying his alcohol, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And I tried, and I pleaded with him, and I begged him. Nothing, no moving. I started fighting with him. He started hitting me with the bottles. There's nothing I could do. Not like I can fight anyway. At this point, I'm like a degenerated man. I look like a Holocaust victim almost. Every joint in my body clicks and clacks, and I throw up all the time and get vertigo, and I can barely grip things with my hands. And I'm trying, but this old man is just still stronger than me. So all I can do is watch as the water level rises and the crocodiles pour in, start tearing people up at the bar. And the last thing I see before I close the door to run away myself is my dad take one more shot before these monsters jump on him. And then it's all screaming. Terrible, unpleasant nightmare, no doubt. But I'm not giving up. I absolutely refuse to give up. So I keep crawling up these stairs, climbing day by day, fight by fight. Every floor is occupied by people that want to live, that want to keep fighting for the most part. So sometimes I have to go up a floor and physically fight somebody. Pitifully, thankfully, most of them are weak and malnourished like me, so it's more like a sad bum fight than anything else. Stab somebody, shoot somebody. Sometimes you come to a floor that used to have a bunch of people in it, and it's just nothing but dead bodies because they all lost hope and decided to commit suicide, but at least they didn't eat all their food, and I can keep going. Until finally, not that many days, maybe a week or so later, there's nobody left in the building. It's just me, and I'm all alone in the penthouse. Everybody else that was there has either committed suicide, been killed by some kind of sentient animal, or decided to fight me and lost. Not that there weren't any consequences for me. On top of being weak, I'm now beat up pretty bad and struggling with various cuts and stabs and wounds and whatnot. And honestly, I might die just even before the alligators get here, but the water just keeps on rising and rising and rising. And a storm decides to blow in, just to put a little cherry on the tippity top for me. And I can see that with the storm moving in, it's going to rain, and that water level is going to go higher and higher, and it hits like a monsoon, just like spit from God to flood everything. And the only thing I can think to do is, since my penthouse level is flooding, maybe I can go up and get to the roof. Maybe there's roof access to this building. So as the rain pours and the rooms flood, I hit the stairwell and run up to the very tippy top, and I see that the door that's supposed to have roof access has been locked. Somebody has chained it shut, and there's no way out. And the only way that I can go is down, back into the knee-deep water where the crocodiles are getting ready to have their way with me. They've been waiting a long time for this meal. And I think to myself, maybe I should kill myself now. This is the end of the line. There's no more world after this. There's no more people. Everything's underwater. It's getting so hot. It's like a sauna. It's like a swamp. I might dehydrate tonight in my sleep and never wake up. These animals might tear me to bits, but I don't even have a gun to kill myself with. The only thing I've got left is a sad little knife that I've had to use on more people than I care to admit. And I just refuse to give up. I promised myself to keep living until I die. And I'm not going to die by my own hands. And if I do die, it's going to have to be something that takes me, something that makes me. And in this moment of desperation, I get the crazy idea to run down the stairs. I can go back into the flooded room, avoid the gators, flip over the dining table. Maybe I can break the window and push that thing out and just like a rowboat, just paddle on away and see if I can find a bigger building or a mountain or something and somewhere to go. And that's my hope, my completely imaginary, invented, made-up hope that's not going to change anything in the world, but I'm going to keep on chasing it. And that's what I do. I run down the stairs, waddle through what was a penthouse living room, beautiful, rich, full of marble and gold, a lot of tacky stuff. But I'm not alone. Between me and my objective is about 3 or 4 of those talking crocodiles that I mentioned before. Smart, coordinated, waiting, and even sitting on top of the table that I was going to make my grand escape with is a very intelligent crocodile that makes eye contact with me and simply says, "Why don't you just give up? Why are you still fighting this? We've eaten everybody else in the building. I mean, it's fun for us to hunt you guys. You scream, you fight, you tear, but at the end of the day, you're just so soft and juicy and weak. And look at you, you're so skinny. There's not much left of you, but you'll make a nice final meal." Terrifying, utterly terrifying to have something that wants nothing more than to eat you, something that has no morality, no conscience, no goal other than the next meal be able to communicate these kind of ideas. And I barely have time to think this as it jumps off the table and all three of them dive toward me. I can't go back up the stairs. That's a death trap. And I'm trying to waddle my way out to maybe the other side, and it's desperation, but they're about to cut me off. And the only thing I can think to do is to simply dive into a small bathroom and wedge the door shut with my feet. Kind of like one of those little box rooms, back against the toilet, feet against the door, knee deep in water. And I can just hear all these crocodiles chomping at their bits, ramming the door, trying to chew on it. And one of them just keeps on talking to me, just keeps going on and on and on about, why don't you just open the door, Brad? Why don't you just let me in? I promise you, if you open the door, I'll kill you and won't bite. It'll be painless. Otherwise, we're going to tear you to shreds. And honestly, I think I'd rather have it that way. We love the blood in the water. We love the way you taste. We love the way you fight. Do you know what's great about human beings? They have emotions, they have empathy, they have weaknesses. Just the fact that you're sitting there listening to me, I know that your little monkey brain is panicking and your little heart's going to beat faster and faster and faster. All I have to do is keep on talking and keep on telling you how delicious you are, and you're going to wear yourself out. We won't even have to bust in there. You'll just pass out. We can open the door gently and have our meal while you're too weak to do anything about it. Nom nom, here we come. And this continues for far, far too long. The crocodile that talks likes to babble on and on about the failings of humanity, about empathy, emotions, practicality, all of these things that we hold near and dear and allowed us to conquer the world. But we were just too stupid to understand that the world was temporary. The world's not permanent. That all of this human accomplishment is ultimately going to be forgotten and rendered to dust, and the only way we created it was by denying nature itself, by denying our own goals and urges and habitats. And the crocodile went on and on and on about the failings of humanity, about how we had conquered the world but didn't know that the world could conquer us, that we had all this scientific understanding but failed to understand something very basic that even stupider crocodiles knew, which was that life is temporary and that you're supposed to enjoy it while you have it and don't worry about the future. Don't plan for then. Why would you even care about that? It's all going to turn to dust anyway when the sun blows up in a few billion years. The fate of humanity hasn't really changed. It's just been put on a different timeline. And you are being stubborn. You're getting in the way of my meal, my hedonism. All I want is another good meal before the world ends, and you just won't let me have it. And I'm stuck in this little bathroom listening to this crap over and over and over again. I'm sick, I'm weak, I'm bleeding. The best thing I've got is a little bit of knife. I'm propping this door up with my legs while they ram into it and chew on it and splinter it and do the best they can to dig their way in. And the water is rising and rising, and my back is cramping worse and worse, and the knees hurt, and my hands hurt. And I begin to feel a little bit hopeless. I realized that my situation, if I have to be real with myself, and I really do here, it's completely untenable. There's no winning this. There's no surviving this. The moment the door opens, these 500-pound monsters are going to tear me to shreds. Even if by some miracle I'm like James Bond and I jump over all three crocodiles and get on the table and paddle away, there's 1,000 more out there in the water. The water that I can't drink, the water that'll bake me in the sun that's too hot with no buildings to go to, no shade, no nothing. There's absolutely nothing that I can do, and I've still got my little knife. And the only thing I can think is that maybe if I kill myself with this knife, it'll be less painful than the alligators. But no, I'm just going to keep living until I die. And that's probably going to be today. But I'm going to keep living as long as I can, and I can't do that. There's no quit in me, and that's just kind of how I was built. So, in an act of complete desperation, I give this world and this universe one final refusal of quitting, one final absolute middle finger to whatever plan it had for me, tear off a scrap of my shirt, and tie the knife tightly in my right hand since it's now so weak and the joints are so fragile I can barely hold on to it. Take a deep breath, and in one quick move, slide my legs to the side, throw the door open with the left hand, and jump in the air as far as I can over the two crocodiles, looking for the smart one in the back, knife raised, ready to stab, all of them snapping at me, excited, and just screaming like a caveman as I get ready to swing down and stab that godforsaken thing in its head. And then I wake up, And that's all there was to that particular dream. I don't know if that story has meaning. It was definitely bleak. It was definitely dark. My wife says I possibly should seek some psychiatric evaluations. But it's what happened. And I think if I had to give you some clarity onto why that happened, it would be because I'm a bit of a doomer. I have a lot of fear and anxiety about runaway climate change and the future of humanity. And I'm also very sick right now. My body is failing me in ways that I didn't know was possible, and honestly, I'm not really getting any better from it or even knowing what's going wrong. And I'm very realistically looking at a future where I might be the world's most useless man, where things are kind of grim and are kind of bleak. And I had also recently watched an Adult Swim short film about a man in a flooded apocalypse who lived in a skyscraper, and he had a very friendly pet shark that he wanted to go save. Some of you may have seen this one, so that probably inspired bits and pieces of it. And I would like to think that this is my subconscious asking me if I'm ready to quit yet, if I've had enough, if it's my time to check out and die, or if I'm going to take all these problems and all this endless pain that I feel every single day and give it all the middle finger and keep going. And I think you all know what the answer to that one is. I'm going to keep on fighting. All right, guys, that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful or at least had a great time. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.